This is an oral historical interview with Dr. Shakeela Hassan. The interview is conducted by Zainab Ansari. Our location is Chicago, Illinois, and today's date is January 19, 2014. The purpose of this interview, being an oral history, is to discuss with Dr. Hassan her coming to the United States and her becoming acquainted with Elijah Muhammad and his wife Clara. So, Dr. Hassan, thank you so much for inviting me to talk to you.
Thank you, Zena.
I'd love to hear about how you came to the U.S. and a little bit about your family background.
I grew up in Hyderabad, India, and at a very early age graduated from medical school and came to the United States. I'm fast forwarding my journey. Came to the United States in 1957. And coming to the shores of New York and looking at the Statue of Liberty, little did I know that I'll be sitting here to record the history. Amazing grace, alhamdulillah. So when I came to Chicago, I was at the Northwestern University Hospital, and during that time I also met my husband, Dr. Shakeela Hassan, and he was doing his graduate studies at IIT, Illinois Institute of Technology, where, alhamdulillah, he's the dean of the Stewart School of Business, and he's retiring next year, he tells me. So he had met through his brother, who was a thoracic surgeon and was working on the south side in the one of the hospitals, and there he met Elijah Muhammad during his encounters. And Elijah Muhammad invited him to his home, and shortly afterwards he was returning home on a holiday, and when he was coming back he was supposed to be accompanied by his younger brother Shakeela Hassan. And he mentioned that to Elijah Muhammad, saying, "You know, brother, when I come back in a month, my baby brother is coming with me to go to school here." So brother, to help him out, arranged that somebody would meet them in New York at the airport and take them to the other airport to take a flight to Chicago, because there were not too many flights coming directly to Chicago, for Pakistan connections. So my husband tells me that when he got off the plane and they both brothers were coming forward, there they met Malcolm X, who was asked by Brother Elijah Muhammad to do him a favor and transport these two gentlemen from one airport to the other. So that's how we met Malcolm X. And eventually, when I met my husband, he asked me to go with him to their home in Hyde Park, or in Kenwood, in Chicago. And it was amazing connection. I felt like I was at home, and they made me feel at home. Their hospitality was amazingly touching, and I didn't have time to think that I was homesick, or because I was too busy at the hospital doing my internship, working day and night. But when I met Sister Clara, she just took liking for me. And I was, as their children used to say, that you are more close to our mom than we are. So we did have a good time. She'll ask me if I know how to cook, and because she knew I was going to get married. And after we got married, when I went to see her, she presented me with a watch, and she brought two down, and she said, "Which one do you like? Which one do you think is good?" So I didn't know I was going to get one. So I said, "Sister, I think this looks very good on your hand." And, "Oh, both look good, great." So she said, "I'll keep the plain one and you take the design one and put it on." I said, "No, you don't have to give me." So she said, "No, this is my present to you, because these both are mine and I want to give you one." And she taught me how to cook, And we had numerous discussions sitting there about healthy food. And in that, brother will often say, we don't eat white bread, we don't eat anything white, and that was all for the devil, white devil. And I said, there's nothing wrong in white flour because we eat it. And I know what you're saying, that the brown flour is healthy because it's whole wheat. And he'll laugh, he'll put his hand on his mouth and he'll characteristically chuckle and he'll say, you are something. And my husband will look at me like, why are you getting so much in detail? And he will tell me about healthy food. And eventually I'm collapsing the time because it seems like it was an ongoing process. He bought farms in Georgia and so on, and he had vegetables coming from there. And I tell you, I have never eaten, even now the Whole Foods cannot produce that kind of vegetable because it was pesticide free, all kinds of preservatives free, amazing fruit. And they'll make a basket, maybe one pepper, a couple of different types of vegetables, and give it to me. And I felt like that was the food that was more tasty than anything I bought in the grocery store. So he expressed his interest in giving, as he called it, black man, the sense of responsibility, to take charge for himself. He said, he never used the word slavery, in my presence anyway. And he always said that he'll chuckle at how the white man laughs at the black man. And, my heart used to go crazy because I was naive, young, and my curiosity and love to learn probably brought me more information from him than just going there, having breakfast or lunch with them and having dinner with them and coming back. Because I had the courage to ask him questions which possibly people didn't ask, because everybody at the table sitting there, he spoke and they were all saying, yes sir, yes sir. And he didn't find me saying that because that chorus didn't appeal to me that much. Because during that time, out of respect, I was just looking at him, and when my turn came, I even had the chance to ask him, brother, you say Fard Muhammad in the name of, in the person of God came, what do you mean? And he would say, yeah, that's what it means. Do you know God is everywhere? I said, yes. And at that point I shared with him that my grandmother used to tell me that God is near your jugulas. You don't call him enough. So here, my way of interacting with him. And I'm amazed at this time, reflecting that I had the audacity to say these things to a national leader of his tribe, these kind of things. And then I said, he cannot be God. He cannot be God. Well, to me, he is God. So I said, in English, talking like that, I don't know Arabic to try to defy what you're saying, but I will never call him God. If someone came and he was the wasila, he was the conveyor of a message to you, when I use that word, he said, he's not the messenger, I am the messenger. So I said, you might be the messenger, but there's a difference between a prophet and a messenger. And so these kind of discussions we used to have. And in one December, I happened to be there, and I have been on call the night before. I was very tired, but they had called to come over, so my husband and I had gone. And I went with sister. I went to look for her in the kitchen, and I said, "Sister, may I have some cereal?" Because she used cornflakes, and at some point I had asked them, there is nothing but white milk. so I was going to pour the milk, and she said, "It is Ramadan, sister." "Dr. Shakeela, it is Ramadan." So I said, "Ramadan?" And so I said, "Okay, I'm sorry, I don't want to eat anything. It's okay." So when we came and sat down at the table, brother had heard it, and he said, "You know, sister, we do Ramadan in December every year." And I said, at that time I didn't have the clue. So I said, "Ramadan is a lunar calendar, and my little history of what I know, I'm telling him." And he said, "No, my people wouldn't get that." And he said, "They are into drinking and doing things and buying the shops off and doing all the wrong things. So this brings them to understand. And the day is shorter." I was profoundly affected. If we had the discipline to do Ramadan, whenever we can do Ramadan, maybe God will forgive us for not following in Ramadan. I mean, if you cannot fast in Ramadan, you're supposed to fast other days or make some compromises, feeding the poor, needy, etc. So I was thinking about that, and I was quite affected that at least he brought the discipline for them to disassociate themselves from the wrong things of the Christianity practice. I mean, he said, "How many people do you know who know what is Christmas?" So at that point, I had no battle with him. So I just said, "I think you're right, and you're doing the right thing." And then he will ask how people should take care of themselves. He was going to buy a hospital, and he thought Muslims should run it. So he was so progressive in his thinking that now we have a Department of Medicine and Religion at the University of Chicago. I'm listed as one of the advisors. But what all I did in my lifetime of interacting with people to not say this is a Muslim thing, because a doctor is supposed to do the human thing. And so with brother I had this, and he had us interact a lot with Malcolm and his wife, Sister Betty. May God bless them, because their soul, and what can I say? So I became quite close at that point in time, as close as you can get, to meet them once every 2-3 weeks on a Sunday for a dinner or something. Because Sister Betty, who came to be known as Betty Chabaz, was a nurse. And brother in his thinking thought, me being a doctor and a nurse, we should have some healthcare plan for the Muslims. So he'll talk like that. But obviously my commitment was to University of Chicago, and I never disassociated myself, or I never thought that was wrong to be with Nation of Islam or something like that, because I didn't have anything to do with whatever way the faith was being embraced. But I knew at the core of it that he had the sense that there is one God. And whatever he talked about Fard Muhammad was his way of justifying for so-called people of color to embrace discipline and so on. And one historic thing that happened is my brother-in-law and my husband, when they came back from Pakistan, they brought Yusuf Ali's Quran, and that was the introduction to him. In fact, I think on his book, the picture that has in certain places where he's holding the book, or Fard Muhammad holding the book, there is by Hassan name is there on his signature. And that is another interesting connection, because my oldest brother-in-law, may God rest his soul, he, Dr. Riazul Hassan, his father-in-law, Sheikh Muhammad Ashraf, owned the printing press in Lahore that to this date prints the English translation, first English translation of the Quran. And now my husband's nephew, Shahzad, owns them. In fact, you will see that a recent book that came out with Is White Man the Still Devils, that I sent the picture to you. In that book, Dr. Salam mentions that he also became an agent, or rather, he had the transactions of, he goes to Lahore and brings, I don't know who all got engaged afterwards, but the first time the books and the many boxes of those that were delivered were from the Hassan family. So that happened, and a few times he was, he had more detailed discussions with my husband, which remained private, and it's nothing to talk about. But what I was involved is, he was showing his cap. It was a red kind of, was either fez or something, and he will put it this way, this way, this way, and I was looking, I was amused. I was always interested in dress appropriateness. So I said, brother, what are you thinking about? So he said, I have a convention coming up, and when I go there, I want to dress appropriately. So all of a sudden it occurred to me, he's trying to show that he is a Muslim leader. What could he do? So I took a paper, I asked sister for a paper, she went in some drawer and brought me the paper and pencil. She always knew what I was doing, and I put a,
So you're sitting with Elijah and Clara Muhammad, and you're proposing the design for his cap.
Yes.
Wow.
And so I made this, like a crescent and star. He said, what's that? I said, crescent and star. It's a Muslim, it has become a Muslim symbol. Like you see Pakistan flag, like you see the Turkish flag. I'm explaining to Brother Muhammad. And then he said, what you propose to do? I said, you can put it on the hat and it will be like this, like that. So he said, okay, I like that idea. Should we have it black? I said, yes. So I sent the design. This is one of the hats that he has worn.
So a hat actually worn by Elijah.
Yes, this is, you can see the pictures. Like in this one, when you wear it, it comes on the side, right? And he used to wear it sometimes like this, sometimes like that. And I didn't know, I'm not a hat maker, so I would send this, you can see what it says here.
Yes.
So when I sent it back to Lahore, to my family, and they would get it done. So this was made there. But since then, his daughter, Ethel Sharif, had opened a big, I don't know what to call it, factory to make clothes, women's clothing, and so on. So she took it there and she used to get them made. So all I had to do is go to Marshall Fields and buy the fabric, which is, you can see how beautiful it is, velvet, and send it to Pakistan and get it embroidered. So I had them in different colors, black, brown, and I also had red, dark maroon, and my beautiful prized one was white. And I understand, I say it for history reason, that one of the sons supposed to have it. I know all the sons, Emmanuel, Nathaniel, Jabir, Wallace, Akbar, but they are not telling you, and they just laugh. So somebody has it. And I always kept 3, 4 of them in stock. So when he needed, we'll get it. I'll give it to them. Because I didn't know who will go to Pakistan and how they'll bring it. So the basic thing was to have a crescented star. And that's it. This journey of the hat is complete. In fact, this design or idea has been taken by many other people in their group, and Parakhan gets his things embroidered like that. And at one time he said his, you know that Elijah Muhammad's grandson Alif Muhammad is married to Farah Khan's daughter, and he worked for CBS for many years and is a good friend of ours. And he called me and said, my father-in-law would like you to fix him a fez. I laughed because I said, since when you know I'm a fez maker? I don't call that fez, and I don't make them. Anyway, and I took him to a tailor that I found, and plain he wanted, and he wanted yellow inside. I said, you make it, it's your issue. And excuse me.
Extraordinary.
So it makes me, excuse me, brother. So this is the story of the fez, as he called it. And I must have made close to 2 dozen or more. And I hope to propose to you that we should look into all the photographs of Elijah Muhammad. There are millions of them, and take his portraits with different hats and make them into a poster. And so the poster will tell you how many colors are in existence of his hat that he actually wore. For example, this one was worn or something. It was given back to me from one of the family members. This and this, both. And the 3 others are obviously not made. And a couple of them are missing because I loaned it for them to have an exhibit and comes back. That's the problem with this loan stuff. And the other side of it, besides this, was he talked about wearing something long, and I remember telling him that you don't need to. And I wasn't saying that he would look more like a Muslim from some other land, but I was saying you don't need to completely transform yourself and be in one garment at one time and the other garment at the other.
Like a long robe?
Long robe.
Okay.
But he was not comfortable doing that, so he decided he'll wear suits. So sometimes he used to say, I always wear this black suit. So I said, why you don't try? I used to love my husband, is a good dresser, and anyway, he had browns and navy blue, and so I will say that. So I think I'm happy to tell you that I had the comfort level in the home like I was talking to a family member. And that's why I said, and it had the respect and care. It didn't have confrontation like, what kind of Muslim are you? Are you Sunni? Are you Shia? It didn't make any difference to me. He was praying. I knew he had a musalla in his dressing room, which he had set up like that. He had Quran there, and he had that. So having seen that, I didn't have to question him, how he was talking to his people, and how he was trying to get them to come. And another profound concept that came alive in me besides being a Muslim and knowing that it's fundamental to share. As soon as you're born, you're receiving and you're giving. A mother is there to feed, and the child is giving her the nourishment of her soul to say, here I am, your progeny, take care of me, So and I'm bringing you the pleasure, and I hope and pray I bring you the pride of being who I am. And Muslims are so steadfast, or rather quick to judgment, to tell anybody that a child born is a Muslim. Okay, so that means you are accepting that every single person who is born is part of the Ummah. But then how can you just say this group is going to heaven and the rest of them are going I don't know where? So brother and I had many discussions on this kind of things, and he didn't dwell too much on telling who's going to hell and heaven, but he was completely committed to making his people live clean. They had regular inspections of homes, and if somebody was not keeping their things, I don't know, whatever they did, they were excommunicated and they were told to reform. And what was bean soup, he called it. And I have the recipe that I had shared, and in Frequency, Winnie Sullivan writes about that. She has kept it beautifully, and she said she has gotten many comments from the readers saying they want the recipe, they have made the soup.
Was he vegetarian?
No. And he ate only once light breakfast and one meal, no lunch. He always ate like 5 o'clock, something like that. And he would have beautiful food, because meat, whether it was chicken, lamb, beef, and then different kinds of vegetables, soup, rice, and she made brown rice, not brown rice, but browned in, with onions and so on. And then she also had pie, with apple pie, bean pie, sweet potato pie. And when I had my daughters, I had the food delivered to my house every day for more than a week. How I can be ungrateful and not acknowledge that
Clara Muhammad would make the food?
yes,
This is food
and had the food delivered, just like my mom would have. You know what I mean? If she lived close by, or she would come and stay with me and do that. So the food was delivered to me until I said, sister, I can manage, and please don't, So she will ask me what special things I want to eat, and I don't think I ever said I want chicken, I don't want beef, but whatever came was excellent. And so one day apple pie, the other day, she knew exactly not to repeat. Whatever they ate, they sent it to me. So from soup to dessert, it was amazing grace. So I had family. I didn't have to go and look for a Muslim group, even though the population was quite small. But I didn't have to feel uncomfortable that I was in with the other and I didn't have any. And they never asked me, did you eat this at home? Or did you do this in Pakistan? She did not, because she didn't care. What I was doing was, we were humanly connected. So from an immigrant point of view, I had comfort. From a family point of view, I had comfort. From the faith point of view, I had comfort. Alhamdulillah.
Sister Clara also gave you a cooking implement. Could you discuss that?
Yes. So for the bean soup, we take navy beans, lentils, and then soak it overnight and cook it with onions, vegetables, and onions, tomatoes, green peppers, and then the last process is to grind it. And this was called Foley food mill. And that's how it was cracked. It came out and you threw the, the stuff that, that you didn't use. And anyway, this thing, she had several of those because she used to have the girls who were working with her. She didn't have people working for her. She had them working with her. She taught them all the skills. How to serve, from which side, how to take the plate away, and then she would tell them about the food, what they were eating. So the girls were grinding it. And when I was standing in the kitchen with her watching, and she picked up one from there and she said, "You take this, and now sister, you make it. And tell me how it comes out." Then she'll say, "You know what, I know you work, so what you do is you make this much and you freeze in jars," she called it, because at that time plastic containers were not that much, so the mason jars, and she said, "You put it in the freezer and you can take it out, put boiling water to your consistency and eat it. And if you don't finish it, just put it back in the freezer." I mean, she was teaching me just like a mother would. And in fact, Brother Wallace and Brother Jabir have had come to my house several times, and when they came, I didn't have to cook. I went to my freezer and brought out the bean soup and with other things, and I served. And when they were leaving, I gave each one of them a container to take in. Because they said, "How did you do that?" I said, "I do it every time. If you didn't come, somebody else will get it." So, this is modern day food processing. I mean, they sell it now in different shapes and so on, just for whatever.
Right, and when people, food mills, they're still really, really popular, and it's a great way to kind of get. So do you get, when you put the food through the mill, do you get a very smooth consistency?
Yes.
Okay, nice, kind of like a puree.
Yes, kind of like a puree, and it takes out the roughage from it.
Right.
And like if I do it for a hurry, putting it in the food processor, you don't have any roughage, and that stays there. So that's one way to keep fiber in whatever, So it works both ways, and that was always served with sharp cheddar cheese and hot sauce. it is so that has, and crotons. I use crotons, but sister always made brown bread or brown rolls, and she had them in the low heat, 250 or something like that, and dried them, in it for a long, long time. And those were served at the table. And at that table, I also met Muhammad Ali and his first wife, his second wife, and anybody that you can think of. And Muhammad Ali was so young, so impressionable. He still is, but he will sit on the next to sister or brother, and he's sitting there, and sister would tell him, subtly point out where to put the fork and where to put the knife, and how not to put the bread on the table. And it was, that home had love, had compassion. I never heard a bad word. I never heard anybody telling anybody off, except brother always saying something about the white man. That bothered me, and I always asked him, and he'll just say, "You will understand."
I have a question about, with your being from a traditional Muslim background, and you say that you really found the encounters, the conversations between you and Elijah Muhammad and Claire Muhammad very respectful. So did you get a sense, that did they ever feel that, because you come from a traditional Muslim background, that somehow you were critiquing their practices? How did you deal with that? I mean, did they have questions about your understanding of Islam coming from
Not
the
really,
subcontinent?
because they knew I was not a elder community member, and my attitude and my sensibilities were not like that. I never insultingly asked them, except, I mean, whatever you call it, how direct can you get? How can Fard Muhammad be a god? And how can you call yourself, you're not Muhammad, peace be upon him? You know, those kind of things I've said to him.
And what you're saying is really interesting because, when you read the books about the Nation of Islam, they make the group sound, very separatist, that they didn't have any relationships with Muslims from the larger Ummah, from the larger Muslim world.
He didn't have, on a large scale, there were hardly anybody coming there in that sense. And they occasionally, to somehow bring the credit to some group or the other, so-and-so was Lebanese or somebody. It's immaterial. I was Pakistani, okay? My husband and his brother were very close, but they chose to be private about it, okay? Respectfully. And if I had taken notes or my husband had taken notes, we could be writing encyclopedia. But we don't feel that this is important exactly for history. And now I feel bad for people who are writing books and they have never met anybody. They don't know much about the Nation of Islam. They don't know the practice, and all they assume. Just like we all in interfaith work know, we want to tell the other what they are. Like even about talking about, we had the discussion the other night at Islamic Foundation about talking about Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him, that Muslims want Christians to think what they are thinking, we articulate. We don't give anybody a chance to come to commonality or understanding of each other. So we should learn to hear what other person has to say. And if you heard them, then you can make up your mind what you heard and so on, instead of just being focused that we know what Christians think and so on. So that's how I had, this is my personal thought, that I didn't enjoy knowing them because they were Muslim leaders or something, on a human level, behaving like the surrogate parents, taking care of you. When you're young, you've never left home. Coming to this part of the world where a lot of people say, oh, this is this. I never used to listen to that, whatever that was.
I ask you about that. Did knowing them ease your transition to the United States?
I think so. I think I treasure the knowing them. Not that I picked up the phone and called them 5 times a day, but knowing them was really good. For example, some family was coming to visit. Who would ask except your relative, Sister would ask me, do you have enough bedding? I was so profoundly touched, I said, yes, sister, I do. So these kind of things. And one other thing that was amazing piece of information to me, when I saw them living in a big home and doing all of this and knowing how hard I had to work at the University of Chicago to get pennies that we used to get at that time. And I said to him, brother, how do you make all this happen? Because he's talking to somebody about a farm and somebody about some building and making the Salam restaurant there, and he designs the protocol, and then his daughter is establishing a sewing factory. They are making beautiful clothing for the people, and the women were so graceful, there were no long things available anywhere.
So the women had their own clothing kind of tailored?
Yes. And, when you saw them on the airport, it was so beautiful.
Do the women always wear the scarf and
Yes.
the dress? And
Mhm.
yes, I don't know, they call it the headpiece.
Yeah, headpiece they call it, and it's designed differently. That in that direction, uh, one point I want to tell you is that Sister Ethel and Brother Elijah Muhammad, sister was Sister Clara also. So they asked me. Occasionally, I wore the Pakistani tunic and baggy pants, shalwar kameez, and they would say, "It is so beautiful." So I said, well, it's really very graceful to me, and how you wear it. But we also talked about how a graceful clothing becomes uh, out of line when it is tight and sewn differently. So these kind of conversations were very important to me to see what they were thinking.
How did you see the role of women in the Nation of Islam, and how was the relationship between Elijah Muhammad and his wife, Clara?
That's very hard to define. He was, she always took the credit that when brother was talking about how Fard Muhammad came and this, and she will say, I brought him. I met him first. Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. You don't read that in the books.
Don't write it, because they think it's not important. Just like nobody knows who made the hat, but they're wearing it. You see what I mean?
I want to ask you, is there anything about you in these books and the hat?
Are you
I've
kidding?
never heard this story.
No.
It's extraordinary.
And the sons talk to me. They want to borrow this to put it in the exhibit somewhere. The grandsons, all of them I know, and they still don't write any story, except it took Winnie Sullivan to come and write the story in Frequencies that I sent you. So it doesn't matter. I don't want it written up, but I want them to know women do things just like men, and not everybody wants to be known for that. But it has to be understood that women have been contributing too, and sister had the amazing role. When brother was in prison, I believe, not in my time here, but she ran everything. In other words, she could go and visit homes, she could, the practical things that they were striving for, cleanliness, steadfastness, honesty, integrity, responsibility. All of these things, sister had a great role. In fact, she sat with me and wrote things. I wish I had preserved those somewhere. So she will ask me to write and keep saying that women should, the importance of cleanliness. So we were coming to the wuzu part, but not the wuzu part, because they were not praying 5 times a day. But I had something to say about that. That, when you do the wudu and you maintain the wudu, that means the cleanliness. Ablution, right. So, thank you. And so those kind of things, she wouldn't use the word, but you must be clean, you must bathe, you must regularly bathe. Soap and water is good, and rinse your mouth, all these kind of things. It sounds kind of bizarre to talk about it, but it was there, and she was writing that. She wanted to write manuals when she started the Clara Muhammad School. It is her important role. And every year she had which she called a get-together. I was barely able to make it because I was working, for her grandchildren, because I was like a grandchild to her. And so they were all getting together, and she would make bean soup, and she would have pastries, and whatever she made awesome cakes, pies, and she will have a party for them. So she was bringing family, people together and celebrate. This was the thing. And one important point I do want to mention is, when I asked brother, how do you do it? So at some point he told me, I think he repeated a couple of times later, that every follower of his was supposed to give him $1 every week. I still didn't see how that made it, okay? But that brought the grassroots spirit in me alive. and possibly sparked my interest to do. It's very hard to criticize people and not give them credit, and I'm trying to put my credit to where I learned from, even if it was in my DNA or something. I went to 40 states to collect money for the documentary, Muhammad, the Legacy of the Prophet, peace be upon him. And 40 states, and people were asking, what do I give, what do I give? And every place, even in Atlanta, we had dinners where 100 people, $100 per person. I came away with 100,000, never less than 50,000 from each place. And we produced the documentary like that. So I think, so it goes back there. And I sometimes used to tell him, body is made up of cells, Ummah is made up of humans, and a body is not a body unless the cells are working together, and Ummah is not an Ummah if humans are not working together. And he'll have a good chuckle, he'll laugh you and say interesting things, he says. And I said, then I will bring up that why white and black and brown cannot work together. And he'll say, he will not refer to whether work or anything. He will just say, white man is the devil. And I didn't like it. It used to hurt me. Not for any reason, but for human reasons, that how can you call something like that? And then why live here? We should go to brown country. I think he transformed people. He made them take pride, and slowly he was coming to be more comfortable in talking about the ways, the real teachings of Islam. But he didn't want to bypass the idea that Prophet Muhammad was God. So this is what separated them. When his two sons left for Egypt, I don't want to say he knew, and I think he was in communication with them, and he wanted, and he probably did it deliberately. And that one nobody wants to talk about. As if, each human has an instinct, right? His two daughters and 5, 6 sons, and their families, and who was married once, who was married twice, what happened, and their children. Alhamdulillah. And at Imam dinner, because I was asked to please not miss this dinner, so I went, and I asked the attendant, what's my table number? I didn't find out, so she said, sister, you are on table 22. So she was going to come with me. I said, no, I'm going to find it. So I went straight down the hall, looked to the right, left. I was trying to make sense of the table. And I found the table 22 right in front of the podium. And for a second I thought, this couldn't be. Why would I be sitting there? So I went, and there were 3 sisters sitting there. So I said, sister, who's sitting here next? Said, if you have table 22, you please sit down. So I looked to the right, to the left, and I decided to go to the right and sit next to this sister. There were 3 sitting here. So I sat next to her, and comes and sits next to me, Keith Ellison, the congressman. And we said, Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum salam. And I said, I didn't know I'd have the honor and pleasure of sitting next to you. So he said, well, I have the honor and pleasure of sitting next to you. And he didn't know who I was anyway. So we introduced ourselves. And as we were talking, I don't even know what we were talking about, several people started coming near their organizers and so on. Assalamu alaikum, and some will give me a hug, some give me a kiss, and so on. And there were 10, 12 people did that, and all ages. So men, women. So he looked at me and he said, a lot of people seem to know you. I said, why wouldn't they? They are my extended family, because they were all from Nation of Islam. And so he said, you're not saying. I said, yes, I'm saying. They are my extended family. That is Jamir's son, that is the grandson, that is so, this is Imam Sultan Muhammad, that is Mir Muhammad, like that. And so he said, oh my God, and he took my hands and he said, he had tears in his eyes, and he said, thank you, sister, thank you. I said, don't thank me. Well, so he said, yes, thank you for knowing them, means Elijah Muhammad and Sister Clara Muhammad, because it is because of them I'm a Muslim. It was just amazing, amazing grace. And at Sister Ethel, who was the oldest daughter of Elijah Muhammad and creator of all these clothing factories, she was an entrepreneur like anything. She would do anything. She, when she passed away, I was the only other Muslim in the funeral. And when Elijah Muhammad passed away, my husband and I were sitting in the front row with at the funeral in the big mosque, Mariam. And I am always in awe of how they have disciplined their children. They're not bringing candy in the mosque. They are not making noises, and the mothers just ignoring. They're praying, and they have no responsibility to the kids. It's just sister had the whole thing in her mind, how it should be.
Dr. Hassan, I am so grateful. I would love to continue our conversation, but we do have to catch a flight. I want to say what you've done is so valuable because you have really shed a light on the home life of Elijah Muhammad and Clara Muhammad, and really kind of, I think you're going to, this interview will kind of challenge people to kind of rethink some of the notions, some of the ideas, the stereotypes they have of this group. I'm very grateful to you. And the story of the hat is amazing. He liked it, obviously.
What?
He liked the hat.
Yeah. I mean, that became his symbol.
Yeah, he obviously liked that hat. So, thank you so much.
And please do find the pictures, because they are there. I have mentioned to Alif and Laila Muhammad and so on, and there is Halima there. She has been trying to work with Halima. Yeah, you have her.
I do not have her contact information, so we're going to go ahead. We can stop recording. Dr. Hassan, this was awesome.